The letters had been in his desk for 3 weeks. He had not been idle. He made no sudden moves. He attended every council, sat every dinner, smiled in every right place. His advisors believed he had recovered. This was his intention. Seraphine noticed. She had always been better at reading him than he was at hiding. She watched him at dinner, the careful listening, the questions he did not ask. She knew that stillness. She waited until the children were asleep. She knocked once and came in without waiting for an answer. This was her right, and both of them knew it. She said, "Show me." He opened the desk drawer without a word. He spread the letters on the table between them. She read without touching them. He watched her read. She said, "How many?" He said, "7 lords." "For confirmed." "3 I need to verify." She said, "Give me the 3." She was back in 4 days. With confirmation. And 2 additional names he had not found. He looked at the 9 names for a long time. He said, "Thank you." She said, "What happens now?" He said, "Now we begin." They did not speak of Haven. They had not spoken of him since the morning she came to the war table. There was an understanding between them. Not forgiveness, not absolution. Just the agreement to keep moving. In the kingdom, the peace continued to look like peace. The lords on the list attended court. They smiled. They bowed. They drank his wine. None of them knew what was in the desk. He watched them the way a man watches a fire he has already decided to put out. Patient. Precise. Waiting for the moment he chose. Lord Gavran Ashwick arrived first. A nervous man, Aldric had always noticed his hands. They shook slightly when he bowed. They had been shaking for 3 weeks. Aldric invited him to walk in the garden. Just the 2 of them. No guards. He talked about the harvest. The road conditions in the south. He gave Ashwick every opportunity to say nothing and be released. Ashwick could not do it. He broke on the 3rd pass around the fountain. Faster than Aldric had estimated. He told him everything. Aldric listened to all of it without expression. He said, "You will write it. Every name. Every meeting. Every arrangement. If the document is complete, you will not see a cell." He did not say what would happen if it was not. The document was complete. It took Ashwick 6 hours, his hands shaking throughout. Aldric read it twice. Then he filed it with the others. Seraphine had reviewed the interrogation from the corridor. She had not needed to be in the room. She said, "Was it everything?" He said, "More than I expected." She said, "Kest." 1 word. His name. Because of the 9, Torvald Kest was the one who would run. Aldric sent the general with written orders and enough men to the other 8. He rode for Kest himself. Because some things you do not delegate. Kest had a 3-hour start. He rode hard. Changed horses twice. Abandoned his escort when they slowed him down. He was not a stupid man. He was a man who understood what was coming. He made it to the Aldenmoor crossing before Aldric found him. Standing at the river's edge in the early grey light. His horse blown. Nowhere left to go. Aldric dismounted 30 feet away. He did not draw his sword. He walked toward him the way a man walks toward something finished. Kest said, "You don't have to do this here." Aldric said, I know. Kest said, I can give you names you don't have. Aldric said, I have all the names. He was not entirely certain this was true, but Kest believed him. That was the difference between them. Kest said, then what do you want? Aldric said, nothing. He had said this once before. He meant it the same way. The river ran past them both, cold and indifferent. The horses stood in the long grass. He brought Kest back in chains. Not because it was necessary, because the other 8 had seen what happened when you ran. The arrests moved through the kingdom like weather. Inevitable. Impersonal. Lords who had done nothing trembled in their halls and sent letters swearing loyalty. He answered each letter personally, in his own hand. Courteous. Brief. Warm enough to be reassuring. His secretary thought it was magnanimity. It was intelligence. Seraphine received the wives. She was extraordinary at this. The precise calibration of warmth and warning. The way she could make a woman feel safe and heard, while learning everything she needed. 3 weeks of it and the kingdom had reorganized itself. The fearful had declared themselves. The loyal had been seen. The gaps where the guilty had been were already filling. He sat at his desk in the late evening and drew a line through the last name. 9 names. 9 lines. Done. He sat for a while in the quiet. Not celebrating. Not mourning. Taking the measure of what had been completed. Then he found the 10th name. In Ashwick's document. A name he had read past 3 times before it registered. Not a lord. Not a soldier. A merchant in Aldenmoor who had been passing letters for 5 years. Since before the peace. Since Malachar's time. He sat with this for a long time. The thread did not end where he thought. It ran further back than he had looked. He called for no one. He told Seraphine in the morning, carefully, all of it. She listened without interrupting. When he finished she said, how far does it go? He said, I don't know yet. She said, then we find out. He said, yes. The same 2 words they had been saying to each other since the beginning. The merchant's name was Eleran. He had been in Aldenmoor for 12 years. He had a trade license, a small house near the river, and no enemies anyone could name. He had been hiding in the plainest possible sight. Aldric rode to Aldenmoor himself. He went as a lord on private business, no banners, 3 men. He wanted to see the house before the man knew he was coming. It was exactly as small as the record suggested. He stood across the road and looked at it for a while. He thought about Malachar. He thought about the years between then and now. The merchant was not in the house. He had been gone 3 days. The neighbors said he traveled often on business. Aldric noted this and said nothing. He sent riders to every road heading south. He sent another to the ports. He rode back to the castle at a steady pace. He was not hurrying. He had done this before. Seraphine had the map ready when he returned. She said, he has family in the southern provinces. She said, there is only one road he knows. She said, the gap is smaller than he thinks. They rode at dawn with 12 men. Fast and quiet. No banners. No announcement. The way Aldric had always preferred. They found him at a way station 2 days south. He was eating breakfast. He looked up and understood immediately. He did not run. Eleran said, "You found me faster than I expected." Aldric said, "Yes." Eleran said, "What happens now?" Aldric said, "You tell me everything from the beginning." He did. It took most of the day. And when he was finished, Aldric had a name he had not expected. A name from before Malachar. Before the siege. Before any of it. The name was old. It belonged to a man who had been dead for 6 years. But a dead man's plans do not die with him. Someone was still carrying them forward. He rode home through the dark. He did not speak for the first 3 hours. His men were long accustomed to this. They rode and waited and asked nothing. He went to Seraphine the moment he arrived. He sat across from her and told her the name. She was still for a long time. Then she said, "I remember him." She said, "He was at court 3 years before the siege. He seemed insignificant." She said, "I always thought he was significant." He said, "You were right." She said, "Then this was never about Marin." He said, "Marin was a piece." She said, "And before Malachar?" He said, "That is what we need to find." The kingdom kept its surface. Feasts and councils and the ordinary movement of power. Beneath it, 2 people who had been through everything. Began again from the beginning. Cale was 10 now. He had noticed his parents working together at night. He had noticed the maps, the late hours, the quiet intensity. He did not ask. He was his father's son. He went to Cale's room one evening. The boy was awake, reading by lamplight, pretending he had not been. Aldric sat on the edge of the bed and said nothing for a while. Then he said, "Do you know what patience is?" Cale said, "Waiting." Aldric said, "It's knowing when to wait and when to stop waiting. That's harder." He said, "Your grandfather never knew the difference. He moved too fast and paid for it." Cale looked at him with those grey eyes that miss nothing. He said, "Is that what happened to Harvan?" Aldric looked at his son for a long time. He said, "Yes." One word. As true as he could make it. He closed the book. He sat with the boy until the lamp burned low. Lyra found him on the ramparts the next evening. She had her flowers and the grey cat she had adopted without asking. She said, "Come and see the moon." He said, "Yes." They stood at the parapet in the cold evening air. She pointed at the moon with tremendous authority, as though he might have missed it. He had a thread that ran back further than anyone had looked. And an enemy with no face yet. He had this. She leaned against his arm. He held still.